The sheer brutality and sadistic nature of what went on that morning in that house. It's something that sticks with you for the rest of your life.
A brutal killing.
She had 80-something stab wounds on her. That amount of rage is usually going to be somebody very close to the victim.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
They're telling me about how their mother has 2 boyfriends.
It's kind of a sugar daddy relationship.
She kept yelling, "No, don't come to my house."
The truth will be revealed.
Everything told me that something wasn't right here and that it wasn't over.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. "20 miles east of Atlanta lies the sleepy town of Conyers, Georgia.
It's just a short distance from the heart of the city, basically. But it still, in a lot of aspects, still has kind of a small town community feel.
We're a very safe community, very little violence. We probably have maybe 1 or 2 homicides a year. It wouldn't be unusual to go a year without a homicide.
But on a calm January afternoon, a piercing noise cuts through the neighborhood.
I got a phone call to report to the chief's office. It was around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Chief let me know that there had been a homicide and that currently the Rockdale County Sheriff's Department was on scene.
Twins, Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead, have made a horrific discovery.
There happened to be a deputy just driving by who they flagged down.
The twins ran up to the side of the car and literally beat on the side of the car, screaming that they had found their mother dead.
For Commanding Officer Jackie Dunn and Lead Detective Ken Swift, it's their first murder of the year.
When we first arrived, there was already a number of officers cordoning off the scene, and there were 2 young girls in the back of the van crying hysterically.
But you have these 2 very sweet-looking little girls traumatized.
One of the twins was biting the inside of her forearm. She said, "It's just a nervous habit. I do it when I'm nervous." It was heartbreaking to watch. You want to be sensitive to their emotional state. And so you treat them with kid gloves. You're very delicate in the way that you approach things.
The twins direct police to the location of their mother's body. 34-year-old Nikki Whitehead.
When you walked up to Nikki's home, you see chaos. Stuff had all been thrown about. You see overturned chairs, broken vases on the floor, and you see and smell lots of blood.
You could smell it like, you know, the rust off of a penny. It was really, really strong. Nikki was where the daughters said they discovered her, just off the master bedroom, in a jacuzzi-like garden tub with water in it.
And she's laying partially submerged with her head out of the water.
Finding her naked and deceased in the tub full of water. All of that immediately calls your attention to a violent struggle of some sort. The sheer brutality and sadistic nature of what went on in that house. It's something that sticks with you for the rest of your life. There's no way to really prepare for it, but at the same time, you do have a job to do that is important, and that ultimately comes first.
The sheer violence of the scene gives detectives an insight into her killer.
Nikki had 80-something stab wounds on her. That's a lot of rage. Statistically, that amount of stab wounds, that amount of rage, is usually going to be somebody very close to the victim.
They must now determine what took place during Nikki's final 24 hours.
Piecing or reconstructing the last hours of somebody's life prior to us discovering their body is vital. It allows us to basically construct a timeline of the last people who were to see her alive, and then go from there as far as eliminating individuals or focusing on individuals that may or may not have been involved. With the twins being the ones who discovered their mother, we wanted to interview them, find out what they saw, and begin that aspect of the investigation. We bring them into the room, and they're both, Jasmaya and Tasmaya, are extremely sorrowful. They are crying. They are inconsolable, as you would expect for young teenage girls to discover their mother deceased. I didn't want to leave them alone. Nobody would have wanted to leave them alone.
Police begin softly, aiming to discover more about their mother.
We learned that Nikki was a hairdresser, and that she was also attending Bowder College, which is a fashion college. So she had aspirations of doing more than just hair. She loved the twins, and Nikki had them involved in cheerleading and dance. Their grades were all A's, exceptional students.
The interview then shifts focus to the last time the twins saw her.
They told me that the night before the murder, Nikki had come in from, their words, partying.
And then when they woke up the next morning, they got ready for school. And when they knocked on their mother's bedroom door, she did not answer. And so they left for school as they normally did. They said that they had not seen their mother at all that morning.
We know she is dead at about 4 when the twins get home from school.
That leaves an 8 to 9 hour window for the attack. As the questioning continues, the crime scene is also being processed.
It was almost impossible to make your way through the living room without stepping on something. Everywhere you looked, everywhere you turned, there was evidence of a struggle. Everything has to be photographed. Everything has to be cataloged and accounted for, so you're very conscious about where you step and how you proceed through the crime scene.
It's incredibly important to collect as much evidence as possible. Even something that may seem inconsequential, you don't know what it means until the investigation is advanced and you have more information.
You could see she's got her back to the wall and goes from one end of the wall all the way down to the other, and you can tell it's a battle. You can see that she made it to the back door. You can see her blood grip on the door handle. She tried to get out. The door was locked. And then you can finally see at that frame to her bedroom door where she's holding on to the wall, and then you can see the blood streaks as she grips the wall and slides down. And that is the largest concentration of blood. And that's the fatal area, we think. Looking at the carpet, you can see where she was drugged, blood streak going into the bedroom.
As far as the house itself, there were not your normal indicators that you would find in instances of a forced entry, broken locks, or a kicked-in door, or broken windows.
So we knew that whoever had been in there had been allowed into the house.
The twins then say that when they arrived back at the house, it was locked.
Came through the door, I put my key in, I just turned it, and I opened the door.
When a woman is killed, oftentimes the first person police look at is her boyfriend or her partner or her husband. And the reason for that is because it's the person they're closest to, and that's the person with the most motive.
Well, we learned that the girl's biological father pretty much disappeared not long after their birth. They knew of him, but he had moved to Canada.
He was eliminated from any sort of person of interest, right away.
But the girls say there is a man in Nikki's life.
The two girls told us about Robert Head and the relationship that he had with their mom, and that he was a truck driver that was gone for long periods of time, but that he owned the house and that they were allowed to stay there. The age difference between them was significant. I believe it was around 20 years. It's kind of a sugar daddy relationship that the girls were aware of. A unique relationship, to say the least.
The twins then provide another key detail, which gives Robert a potential motive.
Does your mom have any other friends or anybody else that come over that you know of?
Talked to a lot of men. Talked to some men, but the only one I've been hearing her talk to lately is Joe.
When police are investigating a case of someone who was sexually involved with another individual, and they realize that there is some sort of love triangle going on, they will pursue that angle and they will investigate it, and they will see if possibly they'd rather have that person dead than have them with somebody else.
Robert Head was immediately a person of interest, obviously, because of his relationship with Nikki. Given the fact that there was another boyfriend in the picture, it became extremely important that we find him and speak to him.
The discovery of a possible affair between Nikki Whitehead and another man has made her boyfriend, Robert, the first suspect in her murder.
The twins said that Robert had overheard Nikki speaking to a man on the phone the night before the murder. We had to eliminate the jealousy angle.
To do so, they must first find him.
We were able to contact his employer.
He was driving his truck in another state.
They confront him with the twins' allegations.
Robert told us the night before the murder, they had argued because their agreement was she wasn't going to talk to other men in front of him. He told us that he loved her to no end, that she was his princess, but he understood the age difference and that he knew when he went out of town that if she had boyfriends, he just accepted that. But when he came home, it was him.
People have open relationships. But in every open relationship, there comes a breaking point where the person or one of the persons involved has definitely had enough.
Robert downplays the argument, but the truth lies with the timeline.
They have GPS on the truck that he drives, and so we were able to see when he left town. He was out west, and would not have been possible for him to commit the crime.
Satisfied, police move on to the other man in the love triangle.
She's got a live-in boyfriend, and she's got a second boyfriend, and that's definitely a relationship we was going to investigate.
Once again, Nikki's daughters provide a critical clue.
They brought up that their mother had been arguing with her boyfriend, Joe, on the phone the night before the actual incident.
This was about 3 a.m. She kept yelling at Joe, "No, don't come to my house."
This is the second fight for Nikki in her last 24 hours.
Okay. What do you know about Joe?
Like, they argue a lot because
she was like, have a nice life, man.
yeah, because they were arguing last night.
Was it an argument that went bad? It is a viable motive for murder, and it has to be investigated.
Then, a witness from that day heightens suspicions even further.
Canvases of a neighborhood are always good in crime scenes like this and incidents like this. The neighbors revealed that there was a black car parked out front, either on the curb or in the driveway.
The car was spotted at 1:30 p.m.
We wanted to identify and find out who it belonged to.
Pretty quickly, we looked up Joe Carter, and he had a black vehicle registered to him.
Police tracked Joe down at his workplace.
Joe is a barber, and his barbershop happens to be right beside the salon that Nikki did hair at.
When we went in to speak to him, everybody inside the barbershop initially was very reluctant and dismissive of us. We said, this has to do with Nikki Whitehead. It's very important. And I guess by the tone of our voice, he understood that this wasn't just some idle questions that we had. When we told Joe what had happened, Joe's reaction was shock. And, you know, he was trying to light a cigarette and his hands were shaking. Seeing anybody's reaction to news like that is always important.
As an investigator, you're looking for the responses. Are they genuine? Are they fake? What we do is we look at it and say, that's interesting. What did they have to hide?
Joe Carter's admission to arguing with Nikki Whitehead the night before she is killed prompts police to bring him downtown.
We told him we're here to see if you're a suspect or to eliminate you as a suspect.
Joe described their relationship as somewhat rocky. It's investigation 101. You begin to probe about what the argument was, what the disagreement is, why, what was causing the tension. They had been arguing about her use of alcohol and the status of their relationship.
Joe also claims that on the day Nikki was killed, he spent the entire time working at the barbershop, over 16 miles away.
We asked him to go take a polygraph exam.
A polygraph examination in essence, is to provide you with information only and not necessarily evidence, to perhaps corroborate a feeling or information you have. If you believe the witness is not telling you the total truth, a polygraph may help you to prove they're being deceitful about something.
But he passed. He was not showing any deceit. We also interviewed his co-workers, who all confirmed his alibis.
His concern appeared to be genuine and for Nikki.
The one question left unanswered is the black car.
The post office had actually logged that car because if it sits in front of a mailbox too many days, then they'll write a little complaint note and put it on the car. And so we were able to determine that that car was actually visiting someone just slightly up the street a little bit and was there innocently. When you work criminal investigations, you're going to follow some leads that look hot and they're going to be dead ends.
But the neighborhood canvas turns up another lead.
Well, we were interviewing everybody that would come in, you know, what have you seen at this house? We learned that someone had seen a red car parked in Nikki's driveway during that day.
The red car is spotted at 3 p.m. Right within the time frame police believe Nikki's unknown attacker gained access to the house.
The red car was important. We wanted to identify and find out who it belonged to.
We found that Nikki had a friend that drove a red car, and so obviously we go in and talk to that friend and said, hey, you know, did you happen to go by Nikki's house today? And she was very forthcoming, yes, I did. I had an appointment for Nikki to fix my hair today.
Nikki did makeup and other cosmetic work for people. They would set up appointments and come to her house. The woman, she had gone to the house, she had knocked on the door. She knocked repeatedly, thinking that maybe she was napping or that there was some other reason why she was not home. After nobody coming to the door and nobody answering, she left.
They trace the woman's cell phone records, which confirm she was only at the house for a few short minutes.
We know from looking at our scene, this was probably a 20-minute battle that she fought for her life. So we were able to eliminate her being involved with the incident. She's probably grateful she didn't go in at that time.
It's their last solid lead in the hunt for Nikki's killer.
Nikki had a business card that had her actual picture of her eyes on the business card. I kept that card at my desk because I didn't want to forget that I needed to be Nikki's advocate. It was special. I saw a woman that grew up rough, but she saw a better life. And not only saw a better life and was doing better for herself, but she wanted better for her children. I'm like, man, I wonder what's going to happen to these girls. I hope some family member is able to take care of them.
Oh, my grandma.
The woman the twins call Grandma is actually their 75-year-old great-grandmother, Della Fraser. Police learn that until very recently, Della was the twins' legal guardian.
We learned that Nikki grew up on the streets, so to speak. She was raised by Della, her grandmother. She was pregnant with the twins at age 17.
Nikki was still present in their lives, but the main role of raising the girls belonged to Della.
When Nikki met Robert, she became somewhat stable. Nikki wanted to provide a stable environment for him and thought she could with Robert's help.
and Nikki felt because of Della's age, she wasn't able to provide the sort of stern rules and guidance that the girls needed at the time. The Rockdale County Juvenile Court had decided that it was important for the girls to establish a relationship with their mother. And in order to do so, they needed to move in with their mom. The two girls had just been brought back into their mom's life just a couple weeks prior to the murder.
The records indicate a fractured family history.
The relationship with Della Frazier, being the twins' great-grandmother, was very much at odds with Nikki.
She loved the twins, and she thought it best that she raise them. The relationship had become strained.
This elevates Della from doting grandmother to person of interest.
Family murders are more common than people think. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it's done in a fit of rage. Despite how appalling it is to many of us, family murders tragically aren't all that rare.
When you are investigating something of this nature, you cannot eliminate anyone without having run them through, every possible scenario and vetted where they've been and what they've been doing and the nature of their relationship with the victim.
Police also learn there are other things at stake.
The situation with the two minors living with Della, she was able to get some state assistance. So losing them back to Nikki when she lost them had been a little financial cost, and so might have been motivation.
A motive for family or domestic murder could be money, could be the loss of money. It's a very strong motivator.
A custody battle has made Della Frazier the latest person of interest in the murder of her granddaughter, Nikki Whitehead.
One of the key traits of, I find, the more seasoned homicide detectives is separating emotion from fact. To do that, you have to look at the basics. You have to look at their motive, their means, their opportunity, and, in certain cases, it may not always be that apparent.
Della is requested to come to the station for questioning, but shows up 6 hours later.
When we initially interviewed her, I would talk to her. I would say, what do you think? Do you think that Robert or Joe could have done this? Or do you think somebody else or somebody you can think of?
When questioning family members, it is very difficult. You have to protect your case, and you have to realize you're dealing with the victims, potentially. And your victims, being the survivors, one of them could be the killer.
Detectives need to determine not only where she was at the time of the murder, but whether Della had the means to do it.
This is a rage killing, and that's shown in the viciousness of the attack and the number of times the mother was stabbed.
To look at Nikki's body and the amount of rage and sadistic premeditation to go through all of this.
This was a battle.
The physical limitations make it seem unlikely, so they turn to her alibi.
When we looked at Della, we were able to put her somewhere else at the time we thought the incident happened.
We eliminated Della as a potential suspect.
But the work involved in examining the family dynamic uncovers a new lead.
We found that there was previous incidents that had taken place at her house.
I got dispatched to a call at the house. As I pulled up in front of the house, I see Nikki running out of the garage screaming. Nikki had marks on her neck, scratches on her arms, indicative of someone that had been in some sort of a tussle.
Officer Myra Scruggs attempts to calm Nikki down.
Anytime you're involved in any kind of a domestic situation or disturbance or any kind of physical altercation, you're gonna have people that are at an elevated state of emotion. They're usually very upset, they're crying, they're yelling, they're trying to tell you what happened, which is what the case was with Nikki.
Through tears, she reveals her assailants.
She said the girls jumped on her. When I spoke to the girls, they showed zero emotion. Their faces were stoic. They were angry. The girls had no marks on them whatsoever. It was so alarming to see these stoic faces. And I've been doing this long enough to know that no one is going to have that much calm about them. Certainly not 14-year-old girls who have been in an altercation with their mother. After they went to court on the assault on their mother from my case, the girls were placed back in the care of their great-grandmother. Everything told me that something wasn't right here and that it wasn't over.
The attack on their mother, 2 years prior to her death, introduces a new pair of suspects.
In the very beginning, we had a very established timeline set by the twins themselves. They left the house at a normal time, they got to school, and then they came home. And they discovered their mom's body.
The twins' hidden history of violence drives investigators to scrutinize their account of that day in greater detail.
You look for irregularities. What's different today than happens every day? Initially, the twins told us they missed the bus, but they tell us they were able to walk to school and only missed 15 minutes of class. So I put my special operations team on foot. It's about 2.5 miles from their house to the high school, and I had them walk the route looking for any surveillance cameras between the house and the high school. I have our school resource officer pull the video at the high school.
The school surveillance camera shows they arrived at 10:15 a.m.
It's 2.5 hours later than what they're telling us. So that's our first irregularity.
That's a lie. How many times have you lied to me?
0.
The only individuals who we kept finding holes in stories and lies were the twins.
With their story now in question, police revisit the twins' original account of their mother's final 24 hours.
And the first suspicion at Joe was planted by the twins. They had alleged that Nikki had been in an argument with Joe the night before the murder. We were able to send subpoenas to the phone company and get phone records, and the phone call that she had been on was not to Joe. It was to a family friend that the family considers a relative. Once we interviewed this person, not only had he spoke to Nikki, but he spoke to both of the twins and thought all was well. Never would have guessed that a few hours later that Nikki would have been dead.
They now see, from the beginning of the investigation, the twins were in control.
They were so dedicated to getting out of that house and going back to their own lifestyle that they would have done anything. They would have told any lie to make themselves the victims.
But was this motive enough for murder?
They were given free rein to come and go as they pleased from Della's house. With their mother, she had rules, she had curfews, she had limits as to what was allowed and what was not.
Nikki was strict on them.
Nikki could foresee that these are beautiful young girls. They were getting into boys. They were getting into a little too much partying. She saw the forest for the trees. She knew what was coming, as with any child that age. I think they're very manipulative, and they know exactly what they're doing. And it had worked for them as younger girls. You know, as you get older, you're playing adult games now. You know, everything changed.
With focus squarely on the twins, they then discover a key item hidden deep within the evidence collected from the scene.
We located a journal, and the journal had specific writings about how both Jasmine and Tasmaya felt about their mom, how unhappy they were, how angry they were with her. I mean, it was a detailed plan about what was going to happen as far as a timeline for the future.
They wrote something to the effect of, if we're ever going to get back to Della's, it's going to have to be soon. And the other one responds, yeah, she's got to go.
Police now have written evidence implicating Nikki Whitehead's twin daughters in her murder.
These girls realized that they weren't going back, that this was it. They were going to have to live with their mother. So they made their decision. And the decision was to kill their mother.
Right now, it's just a theory. They still have to prove it.
The autopsy was able to reveal that there was actually a hair lodged in between the teeth of Nikki. That hair was matched to one of her daughters as having come from her.
The interesting thing in this case was that hair was found in Nikki's teeth. That is not someplace where you would anticipate finding DNA of a relative, of somebody that you're cohabitating with. So that's the importance of not only finding DNA, but interpreting its significance.
This connects back to something police noticed when the twins were first questioned.
We see one of them biting herself. And of course we're like, hey, what are you doing? And she said, I bite myself when I'm stressed out like this. Matter of fact, we look at those bite marks and there's a little space in the two front teeth, and we know that Nikki's got a little gap in her two front teeth. So we have an odontologist make a mold of Nikki's teeth and compare it. And that odontologist said that to a probability, Nikki bit the twin defensively as the twin had her from behind trying to break the hold.
Ultimately, the bite mark is what sealed their fate. I do believe that she left that bite mark for us.
On May 21st, 2010, the twins are arrested just before their high school graduation. Confronted with the evidence, they eventually make a stunning on-tape confession, revealing the true series of events.
The day began as the girls waking up and getting ready for school, and then getting into an argument with their mom about something minor. Something related to boys or a curfew, something of that nature. Maybe it was the resentment of going from a house with their grandmother with no rules or restrictions to living with their mother, who suddenly was enforcing these rules. Regardless, it created a hostile sort of environment and relationship between the two of them. Ultimately, it erupted into a physical fight.
She just screamed out and stopped. I had her hands, she has her feet. Kind of like a joint effort.
These two girls are now at 16. They're about her same build and stature. Nikki's a small frame woman. She's fighting for her life. The girl's choking her from behind, and Nikki just using everything that she can because she's outnumbered and out-weaponed and everything. She's doing everything she can, and she bit the twin trying to escape.
They began repeatedly stabbing their mother.
I think I picked up a knife and I stabbed her. It was multiple times.
In the head, in the neck, in the breasts, in the back.
She's just bleeding, her head bleeding, I guess from the face. And she's just bleeding everywhere. Blood on the floor.
And then, like nothing happened, the twins go to school.
And as they walk down the hall, one of them veers off from the other one to a trash can. We don't know if that was a knife. By the time we saw that video, sanitation had already picked up the school's trash, so we'll never know.
At one point, they tried to claim self-defense, but it was so ridiculous. There was no way anybody was ever going to wrap their head around a story about self-defense, given what the inside of the house looked like.
And I think it was at that moment that I realized that these girls are sociopaths. You know, how do you kill your mother and then go to school and continue your day like it never happened, and then come in the door and act like you found her that way? It's hard to imagine that your own children could inflict that upon you. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
In exchange for a guilty plea, the pair are offered a deal: 30 years each for voluntary manslaughter.
So those girls won't be out until they're in their late 40s, which I think that served justice. Because you had two young ladies that I think are, they're just evil.
I think most people are uncomfortable or unwilling to accept that as something that could exist in 16-year-old girls. But knowing that they did plead guilty and that they're behind bars and justice was found ultimately for Nikki, you're able to move past it.
They're ultimately where they need to be. It breaks our heart, having listened to Nikki talk about these girls and the potential for these girls, how intelligent they were, beautiful young girls. I hate it that their mother couldn't make it work, that Nikki tried her best. And I don't think she should have had to pay for that love with her life.
Secret lives can be the death of you.
A brutal killing.
She was just this lovable girl who had no enemies.
There was no reason for this.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
The dangers of internet dating. It's a game of Russian roulette.
Only her closest friends knew that she had this wild side.
There's plenty of crazy people out there that, she might have sent a picture to.
The truth will be revealed.
She fought for her life.
That's a pretty violent way to kill somebody.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Staten Island's Willowbrook neighborhood, a world away from the hustle and bustle of New York.
It's basically like Smallville, USA. The neighborhood itself is made up of a lot of Orthodox Jewish families.
On a sunny Saturday, you'll see people walking to the synagogue. Safe, quiet area.
But when a mother comes home one night after work, she finds it far too quiet.
Seema Posse came home around 7 p.m. that night. Something didn't appear to be right from the beginning.
The back door appeared to be open. She thought her daughter, Eliza, would still be at work.
The house appeared to be in disarray. There was papers thrown on the floor, drawers open, objects thrown all over the ground. The first thing she did is to call her daughter to see if Eliza was okay. There was no answer. She was, upset and worried. She goes to check her daughter's bedroom door. It's locked.
She panicked. She ran outside. She called 911 and waited for police to come.
She felt that something bad happened, and then she didn't want to see that by herself.
NYPD Detective Michael Kenny is called to the scene.
When the police come in, they break down the door. Eliza Posse was found dead in her bedroom. She was 18 years old.
Once the police told Seema what had happened to Eliza, she just started shrieking, screaming, like people who didn't even know what was going on were coming out of the houses to see what was going on outside. She could not believe the daughter that she just left several hours earlier was now dead.
To capture the killer, Detective Kenny will need to piece together Eliza's final day on Earth.
The last 24 hours are critical to any investigation. It provides the information the investigator needs, such as who, what, where, when, and why. And that applies to every murder case as you're trying to solve it.
The first thing we do in trying to determine the time of death was speak to the last people that spoke to her. So our first interview, obviously, would be Seema, her mother. When Seema left around 10 a.m. in the morning to go to work, Eliza was still home. Eliza normally would have been going to work around 1 p.m. That particular day, she called in late. So she was going to work after 1 o'clock. Seema comes home around 7. So somewhere between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. is when Eliza was killed.
Through tears, her mother provides the details of Eliza's life, now cut tragically short.
Eliza and her mother were very close. This was her little girl who she was looking forward to, watching grow up and get married and have kids. She just graduated high school. She was taking off a year just to work and save up some money. She was just a very friendly, outgoing girl, liked by anybody who knew her. Eliza grew up in a very religious, Orthodox household. Her mother and father divorced about a year before the murder, and her father moved back to Israel.
Eliza's mother isn't the only family member interviewed at the scene.
Eliza had a half-brother, Raviv Gabe, and he was just getting married as the parents got divorced.
Raviv ran a kosher cookie business. I wanted to know what he did that day, where he was. Raviv told me that he was delivering cookies. He was out on Long Island around 1 p.m. Making a delivery. After he learned of his sister's death, he came to the house to console his mother. Raviv was with Seema, hugging her, consoling her, and asking me a lot of questions. How could somebody do this? We need to solve this case.
For Detective Kenny and his team, the first step is to examine the crime scene.
There's Eliza laying on the ground, naked. There was a pillow over her face, the towel underneath her, and a mattress that was pulled over part of her body.
Her hair was wet still, so they were theorizing that she would have just come out of the shower.
But it almost appeared that she was placed there. It looked like there was some bruising on the face. There wasn't a lot of trauma to the neck.
Suffocation is one of those types of murder that requires the victim to be overpowered by the assailant. It is not a death that is easily accomplished if the victim is able to fight and struggle, and therefore it can take a prolonged period of time, and there's an element of pain and suffering.
But this person overpowered Eliza pretty quickly, but you would think it would be a male, somebody bigger and stronger than she was.
She was in a state of undress, which automatically you have to entertain the possibility that there was sexual assault or sexual activity.
We fingerprinted all the areas that we could. We bagged the pillow that was over her face, the towel that was underneath Eliza. There was a spot or two of blood on the towel.
And they discovered some skin under her fingernails. Of course, they scraped that and sent that to the lab also to check for DNA.
When investigating a crime such as this, you want to throw a wide net and try to collect as much evidence and data as possible.
We knew that ultimately some DNA would be coming back from Eliza, whether the blood stain or the stuff under her fingernails. I felt early on that anybody I spoke to, I would take a DNA swab.
But processing this evidence takes time.
The CSI effect, as it's known, has altered the public's perception of how long things take. Crimes are not solved in 2 hours. It takes hours and hours of examining evidence and analyzing test results that come back.
Obviously, you're not going to stop an investigation and just wait till it comes back. This was a high-profile case, and the pressure to solve this case was strong.
Detectives worked to uncover what brought the killer into the Parsees' home.
There was a few possibilities in how Eliza was killed. The first, obviously, being a burglary. Given that the house was in disarray, that was obviously our first angle.
After the police did a search, they determined that maybe a few dollars and some jewelry was missing.
If you're breaking into a house to steal spare change and the homeowner comes in, what the burglar is thinking is, I can try to run away, but I may not make it. And if I don't make it, then I'm going to jail for a long time. And so they make a split-second decision and they commit a murder.
In this particular case, it appeared that somebody entered through the rear door. The first thing you want to check is people's MOs. Is there a pattern? Is there a particular person that's going around, going through unlocked back doors?
Detectives canvass the neighborhood, looking for a lead. They discover a community in shock.
It's not a place where you get murders. But here you have a girl who everybody might have saw the day before, or waving, saying hi. And now they find out that she's dead and possibly raped in her own bedroom. I mean, they just couldn't fathom it. This is something you see on the 6 o'clock news in another neighborhood, not in their backyard. It's also a neighborhood where neighbors look out for each other. If there's a stranger, people take notice.
Looking at the window from 1 p.m. to 7, the neighbors did identify this particular group of landscapers that were in that vicinity at the window where Eliza could have been killed. That would be the opportunity if there's a bunch of people cutting lawns. Nobody would take a second look if somebody was to walk down into the driveway, go in the back of the house, and try doors. There was 5 young men. We end up interviewing each one of them. All 5 of the landscapers, we took DNA swabs, and we took fingerprints. It was also helpful to get a reaction on somebody not wanting to be swabbed or being swabbed. Each one of them were very cooperative. My gut was that they weren't involved, that they were just landscapers doing their job.
They looked to Eliza herself for more clues.
And looking at the body, it didn't appear like there was a substantial struggle. If somebody broke into your house and it was a stranger, there would be some screaming and yelling, maybe chasing, running around. If Eliza was familiar with the assailant, it might have been like, what are you doing here? And then an attack happened.
A key detail from the crime scene adds weight to this theory.
In cases in which the body is covered and the body is concealed, that suggests that the murderer has feelings of shame about what they've done.
They can't handle looking at the dead person, which leads the investigator to believe this killer knew the dead person.
Detectives turn to her brother Raviv to learn more about her relationships.
Raviv gave us some direction on whom we want to speak to regarding her personal life. Most of his conversation was directed at the ex-boyfriend. He insisted that we look at him, that he was a controlling, aggressive ex-boyfriend that had feelings for her that were still unresolved. Raviv felt strongly that this was the person who killed Eliza.
The troubled history between Eliza Parsi and her former boyfriend Marique has caught the attention of the NYPD.
She had broken up with him a little while before, and he did not take it well. On surface, it's just a couple of teenagers breaking up. This was a little more intense. She was this Jewish Orthodox girl, and he was a Muslim, came from a Muslim family, so some people wondered if that's the reason why she broke up with him.
The families didn't really want them together in the first place.
He started to stalk her, follow her to work, follow her after work, seeing where she was, who she hung out with. He just wouldn't take a no from her. There was one time when he even broke in. She was sleeping, and she woke up to see him standing over her bed.
He was definitely somebody that we were looking at, a person of interest that we felt strongly that he might have been involved. We start going into some of his background. We came to understand that he had some sort of business connections with fake handbags. He was somewhat of a quasi-criminal. He wasn't an altar boy, so to speak.
Then, Marique shows up at the crime scene.
It's rare to have persons who I will call witnesses for now, waiting at the crime scene to volunteer information to the police. It's unusual.
I felt it was important to grab him, bring him back to the precinct, and basically get a timeline from him in the last 24 hours where he's been. His whereabouts for those 24 hours was, I was home, sleeping, and did this and that. He didn't have a concrete alibi, especially the window that we were looking at from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Detectives take Marique's DNA and look into his movements on the day of the murder.
Eliza lived in Staten Island, and Staten Island is separated from the rest of New York City by the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. A lot of New Yorkers have what they call an easy pass. They will have a time and date when somebody went over the bridge and paid the toll. So this is a very effective tool for police.
We ordered the Easy Pass records, we ordered his telephone records. We were waiting for them to come back, along with the DNA.
Marique's behavior takes a strange turn.
Marique showed up at the funeral.
It was quite the ruckus. In fact, I think Raviv had to be restrained from going after him. The mother was yelling and screaming. They had to forcibly remove the ex-boyfriend from the services. For the ex-boyfriend to go to the funeral, from my perspective, there'd be a couple of reasons. Number one, he wanted to go to appear that he was grieving Eliza just like everybody else. He also might have wanted to go to see other people's reaction, what information he might be able to gather from the conversations at the service. Staying close to the investigation could be a reason to be there. He was a constant person of interest.
As the spotlight glares over Marique, Eliza's pathology exam reveals a key new detail.
It was determined that she was not raped, but it was determined that she recently had consensual sex with someone.
One of the angles that they're normally going to look at is talking to Eliza's friends to get an idea of the person that died. And in the conversation, they let us know there was this kind of secret life that Eliza was living.
Only her closest friends knew that she had this wild side to her, where she would go into clubs in the city, and sometimes she would meet somebody that night. And to the people on the block or her neighborhood, that was probably just as shocking, if not more, than the murder itself.
She had a very solid community of people that were the same as her. And, at 18 to say, you know what, let me go into the city, find somebody different, find somebody more fun. There's a certain maturity to think of that and want to explore outside your own little community.
But Eliza was doing more than frequenting clubs.
We found that Eliza was meeting people on the internet and having sexual encounters with the people that she met. Back then, there was no Instagram, there wasn't Facebook. The internet was still in a kind of an infancy stage. It was a bit of a oddity. Was it ill-advised to meet people on the internet? Yes.
The dangers of internet dating is it's a game of Russian roulette. You do not know what is going to happen to you if you get into a closed room with a person you've never met before.
There's plenty of crazy people out there that she might have sent a picture to, and that was enough to try and track her down. She might have said where she lives, and that was the extent of their exchange. And he might have come and killed her.
Detectives begin the daunting task of tracing Eliza's online activity.
When we actually see a murder that the theory is it was internet dating based, they're very difficult to solve because of the ability to hide behind a website, to hide behind an email address, to hide the address out of the country. It's very difficult to deal with and solve because you're dealing with fake identities all the time.
They manage to uncover a direct link to Eliza's timeline.
Police found out that Eliza was supposed to meet up with somebody that she had met online, and she had talked to him the night before her death, and that she had made plans to meet up with him in the near future.
The old adage is if you have a dead woman, you put her last 4 boyfriends in a room and one of them did it.
Is this internet encounter with this young man, maybe he wanted something more and she didn't want to give him it?
Detectives hunting Eliza Parsi's killer have a new person of interest, a man she met online.
Nobody was calling us and say, by the way, I also met Eliza on the internet, and, we were intimate. So we had to do our due diligence and find this young man.
Eliza's communication with him reveals another key detail.
The day before she was killed, he did meet with her after 10 o'clock when Seema left. They were sexually active.
What she would do is, her mother had a pretty set schedule, so she knew when she would leave and come back. She would have people come over to her house, and instead of coming in through the front, she would leave the back door open, and this way no one would see them.
I don't know if that was a daily thing, if he would have came back the next day at 10 o'clock. He would have been somebody that was familiar with the area, familiar with the place, familiar with when mom's not home. So he would definitely fit in the timeline of when she was killed.
In order to speak with him, they must first track him down.
We had some forensic detectives taking IP addresses and matching them with people.
They trace the young man to a home in Brooklyn. Police bring him in for questioning.
If you've communicated with a person on a computer, there's no way of hiding that. And there will never be a way for you to deny that. Full stop.
He was cooperative. He was forthright that he did know her, that he did meet her, that he's been to the house, how it was coordinated. You know, he waited for her sometimes. If he was there too early, he would have to walk around the block. He knew the mother's car. He would have to wait to see to make sure that they didn't cross paths. He was very forthright regarding the relationship, that it was a secret relationship, that they met on the internet, that there was only a couple of encounters. When I told him that she was murdered, he was obviously upset. He was surprised. But he did say that he did not meet her on the day she was killed. All this stuff was information that he gave me freely, and he also freely gave me his DNA. We ordered the Easy Pass records. We ordered his telephone records. I didn't feel that he was a person of interest.
Investigators continue to scour Eliza's digital history.
For each person that we identified and she met on the internet, I would go through a timeline. And I would have them do the 24 hours, what they did, where they were, who they were with during that time, how they knew Eliza. And obviously I would take a DNA swab of each one of them. In interviewing each of the person that we identified, I didn't have a specific feeling that any one of them was a person of interest. They seemed to be people that were involved.
They were looking at these people, but no one was ruled out. Eliza's murder was not your typical homicide, but the detectives that work it, they were very dogged. That's the thing with homicide detectives. You know, they take it personal. It's almost like one of theirs, one of their family, and they work, you know, it seems like they work that much harder. When this one, they left no stone unturned, all while waiting for the DNA to come back.
As police quietly investigate Eliza's secret life, the press is making it public.
It went from a burglary to now here's a young, pretty girl who might have been caught up in some kind of sexual encounter, and that gets the press a little more interested.
It was an unfair dramatization of what's going on. I personally felt bad about that. I did get phone calls from Seema, asking me, and she found that out from the news. It wasn't fun to tell the mother that she learned from the news that her daughter, who was 18, was sexually active with strangers. It wasn't a comfortable conversation. When Eliza was 18, my daughters were like 15, 16. Every once in a while, those things can creep in. You can say, oh, my daughter, is home alone at times. But you have to be able to separate your professional from your personal life. You see the things that people have done to another, and, you try not to get hardened from it, but you have to look at it as a job. You're there to make a difference. You're there to get from A to Z, and, you have to stay focused.
This focus leads to detectives uncovering her name on a police report.
This kind of secret life that Eliza was living, unbeknownst to her mother and her brother, had its consequences. She made a report that she was sexually assaulted.
She left the bar in Harlem and went to an apartment, and when she woke up, there were several naked men standing over her.
Could have one of these 4 or 5 assailants looked for retribution towards her for this assault? I didn't do anything, and you're causing trouble for me. I don't want to be arrested, and I'm going to now kill you.
A report claiming Eliza was sexually assaulted by multiple men gives Detective Kenny a new line of inquiry.
I think this kind of alternate lifestyle that she was at a young age of 18 had its consequences. And this was obviously something of interest for us as to what might have caused her demise.
But tracking them down will be an uphill battle.
Police investigated it, but they were not able to arrest anyone.
It wasn't like all of a sudden, this is it. We found out that she made a complaint that she was raped, and these are the people. There were so many different layers, so many aspects. But you always have to follow wherever investigation goes. You're not going to discount anything. Obviously, then I had to follow through with that and find out who she met and how she had contact with these people.
You as a police officer have to be aware of that at the time, that if there are other suspects, you must investigate them. It's part of your job. You can't be totally tunnel visioned on the one person and only that person. If these branches take you away, you have to investigate it.
As detectives search for the identities of the men who assaulted Eliza, the DNA results come back and open up an entirely new direction.
The first phone call I get from the medical examiner's office is that the DNA results ruled out any of the males that she met on the internet, the landscapers. It ruled out the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend. To my surprise, the DNA that is found on the towel was that of a relative, of a male.
The only male relative they had was the half-brother, Raviv Gabe.
To me, it wasn't like, oh, we got the person. It was that, could have been the blood was left because he had a bloody nose the day before and they just didn't clean the towel.
DNA can be a very helpful investigative tool in that it may cause investigators to look at someone that they had not considered before, that they may want to investigate what their activity was the last 24 hours and how that related to the victim's activities.
Detectives work to understand how Raviv fits into the timeline of the homicide.
When I originally spoke to him and asked him where he was, what he was doing that day, he said he was out in Long Island making a delivery. We just started to break down where he said he was at what particular time. So we order his Easy Pass records. Once we get the records, we'd be able to get a photograph. As you go through the toll, he takes a picture. They're what they call robbery cameras. So anybody that comes onto the island, we can basically have a picture of who was in that car. He had a very unique delivery truck. We had photos of him coming over the Verrazano in around 1 o'clock. Now, Raviv is a person of interest. Why would he say he was somewhere else at the window where she was apparently killed?
This gives them enough for a warrant to examine Raviv's cell phone records.
I carry my cell phone everywhere I go. If you go to my cell phone provider, you will find that the cell phone towers were going off in the area I'm telling you I was in. Depending on what you've got turned on your phone, you can be placed down within 2 or 3 yards of where you actually were at any given time. And unless it's a great coincidence that I just happened to be within 10 square yards of where the murder took place, and I had a motive and opportunity to do it, my cell phone is going to clear me.
When we got his cell site information puts him in Staten Island in and around 1 p.m. We knew exactly where Raviv was at any given time. 1:30, we have him in the area of the house. And then like right on the corner around 2:10, so why would he lie?
Raviv's timeline gives him means and opportunity. Next comes the search for motive.
About a year or so before the murder, Raviv got married. And as a wedding gift, the family gave Raviv the business, delivering the cookies to the grocery stores.
The problem with it was that whether it was Raviv not knowing how to run it, being a young kid, just married, but the business wasn't doing well.
We found out that he was trying to keep his wife in the lifestyle that she was accustomed to. Our parents had a very nice house. They had more money than Raviv and his family, and that was a lot of pressure on him.
I've experienced several cases in my time where the suspect is a family member. This often happens when there's inheritance involved. So money is a great motivator. Money makes people kill too.
But Raviv's money trouble doesn't explain why Eliza would be targeted.
But Raviv did stay close with his sister. He still kept an eye on her, asked her what she was doing.
There was nothing that there was hostility or she owed him money or they grew up together hating each other. But you want to kind of let the facts take you to whatever place it takes you.
With Raviv looking guilty, detectives need to compare his DNA specifically to what was found at the scene.
The DNA that is found on the towel was that of a Raviv's. And the skin under her nails was in fact also Raviv's. There's nothing more solid than when somebody was assaulted and there's dead skin under somebody's nails. Why would a brother want to kill his sister for no reason? It doesn't make any sense.
Detective Michael Kenny is convinced Eliza's half-brother is the one who killed her. But concerns over a conviction still remain.
I have to go back at some point and tell the mother that your son killed your daughter, and she's gonna want to know why. The best way to know why is to get it from him. So I called Raviv and told him the ex-boyfriend had some other friends that we were looking into, and I don't know who they are. I asked him to come to the precinct and look at some photographs. So he's a little belligerent. He started giving out to me that why it's taking so long, that this case is going on for a month. We all know it's the ex-boyfriend. Why don't you arrest him already? So I have to play along, and I was apologetic. I'm trying my best, but I need your help. To my surprise, he does come in the next day, but he brings his wife. I have his wife sit in one room, and I bring him into an interview room.
Armed with a meticulously constructed timeline, Detective Kenny goes in to break apart Raviv's story.
I start again asking him about his whereabouts, where he was and when. So he starts answering the questions like normally. But then he starts like, why are you asking me? I thought I'm here to look at pictures. And he started getting a little more hostile.
They hit him with they knew that he was lying. They knew that he wasn't in Brooklyn at the time of the death. They knew that he was in Staten Island. And they kept pressuring him. You know, why'd you do this? And he wouldn't crack. He wouldn't say that he did it.
It's pretty common for people to deny even with that kind of evidence, just for self-preservation.
If the police have evidence that you've done it, and they've got the skills to interview you, they will make you crack in that interview room. Very few people who have committed a crime can withstand a successful police interview.
I just laid it all out for him, that we have your DNA, we know you did it, just tell us why you did it. He kept denying, I didn't do it, but I kind of threatened him. I told him, tell me what happened, or I will go out and tell your wife and the community that you raped your sister and that you and then killed her. Because I don't have any other information, and you know, that's as good a story as any. At this point, he started crying. He told us what occurred. He tells me that the business wasn't doing very well. So in Raviv's mind, you know, something that might have been worth a lot of money a couple of years ago as a wedding gift wasn't worth anything. So he felt that he was still owed a wedding gift. He came to find out that his mother came into some money from the sale of a house. He believed it was more than $25,000. So he felt that she was hoarding that money somewhere. So that's why he broke into the house.
She caught him in the act, wanted to know what's going on.
The confrontation happened in that hallway and then ended up in her room.
The timeline explains moment by moment the tragic events of Eliza's final day and how Raviv's lust for money led him to kill.
Mom leaves the house regularly around 10 a.m. every day, leaving Eliza home alone. Eliza calls her boss and lets her know that she's not going to be at work on time, that she's going to come in later.
Raviv made some deliveries in Brooklyn, and then he altered his route and headed to Staten Island. He went over the Verrazano Bridge, went to the apartment that he went to many times before, entered through the back door, which he knew was open at times.
He already had gone through the downstairs, and he was in the mother's bedroom looking for the money.
Eliza's just coming out of the shower with a towel on her, and he's going through drawers.
She could have grabbed the phone, I'm calling Mom or I'm calling the police, which would have escalated his anger.
She put up a valiant fight. It was all skin under her fingernails, like she fought for her life.
And then he took a pillow, put it over her face, took a mattress, and covered her body, and left.
After he killed her, he got back into his van, which was still filled with cookies, drove back over the Verrazano Bridge, and went into Brooklyn and finished his route. He did show up later in the day, and again appeared to be a very upset brother. But it turned out to be just an act.
Raviv never found any money in the house because, unbeknownst to him, that money was spent. So there wasn't any money in the house to begin with. I never felt Raviv had any remorse. Sometimes you feel like somebody is telling you what happened as I've been holding this in for so long. It just comes out in kind of a release of guilt and stuff, but I never felt that Raviv had an ounce of guilt. If you define a sociopath as just some lacking regret, I think you'd probably say he's a sociopath.
Police charge Raviv Gabay with the murder of his sister.
I have to tell a mother that we solved your daughter's murder, but it was your son who did it. So, you know, it was difficult for me to do that. And, you know, when I went to the house and I told her, you know, she was hysterical. She spoke about her daughter and how beautiful she was and all the things that she had going for her in the future that was ahead of her. And how the son that she brought into this family ultimately killed her.
On May 2nd, 2006, Raviv pleads guilty to a reduced charge of first-degree manslaughter. He is sentenced to 18 years in prison.
1 year for every year that Eliza was alive. So he had to do the same amount of time in prison.
Seema then just started yelling uncontrollably in both English and Hebrew at her son, asking why, or how could he do such a thing? How could he commit such a crime? Here was a young, vibrant girl who had her whole life ahead of her. He ruined so many lives just for a couple of dollars and a piece of jewelry.
I personally felt for the mother. She lost both her kids in the same day. It just wasn't a happy ending.
It goes counter to the whole notion of family. It's a complete destruction of that trust that you have in one another.